Welcome, folks. I'm Anika Larsen. I'm an actor and a singer. I am the mother of two little boys who are 5 and 7 and manage to make every day of my life both a joy and a battle. And I am your host of tonight's Meet the Parent, where we talk to parent artists about how life in the theater affects their parenting and how parenting affects their life in the theater. Now, just so you know, New York City Children's Theater's mission is to promote children's literacy and social development through accessible professional theater productions and arts and education programs. The result is empathetic, creative, and independent thinkers who make a positive impact on their world. I joined the board of New York City Children's Theater because of the extraordinary outreach that they do. There are programs in public schools and in homeless shelters. And we also provide important programming for free on our website. So our Start the Conversation series helps parents talk to their kids about subjects that can be tricky or even scary to navigate, like gender, racism, immigration, school emergency drills. My husband and I, really, we have been truly grateful for the help of Start the Conversation and how elegantly and thoughtfully they break down big, weighty ideas to help you talk about them with your kids. And again, these are free on our website and they are available to anyone, anywhere in the world. So tell your parent friends all about it. And of course, on top of all of these phenomenal programs, we are the only company in New York City that does a whole season of original new plays for families, and they are magical. My kids love them. And so this spring, from March 18th to April 9th, we will present Fish in a Tree. It's a play that uses live video technology, dance, and music to explore a young girl's journey with dyslexia. And one of our newest shows, Cinco, tours schools and community centers across New York City, and it will be making a special stop at Theater Row this March. And here to tell us more about it are New York City Children's Theater's Director of Education, Maddie Calandrillo, and our Associate Director of Education, Andrea Palma. Hi, Maddie. Hi,
Hi.
Andrea. How are you
Thanks for
guys?
having us.
Thanks for being here. Now tell us more about Cinco.
Yes, so Cinco is the bilingual Spanish and English version of the multimedia musical Five. The show incorporates live music, puppetry, videos, and sensory objects that engages students in exploring their five senses while celebrating the unique boroughs of New York City with Piper the Puppet. To date, over 11,000 young people have seen the show.
And Five and Cinco 5 are coming to Theater Row this March, right?
Yeah, we're so excited to be bringing both these shows to Theater Row on Friday, March 31st at 10:30 and then 1 p.m. So if you have little ones, ages 2 to 5, you can get your tickets now to join us. And you can visit our website at nycchildrenstheater.org.
There it is. My boys.
It's right there.
They're two of the 11,000 that have seen the show, and it was truly delightful. Hey, what else is happening in education?
Yeah, so in addition to Five and Cinco, and our education department has over 30 amazing teaching artists that bring our literacy-based programming, Literature Play, to students all over New York City. And as well, we have 2 anti-bullying programs.
So I recently learned that we started doing these anti-bullying programs like years ago, and then demand over the years sort of waned. And then after COVID, with all of the kids coming back to school, the demand for them has skyrocketed in schools. Is that true?
Yeah, so we actually continue to present the anti-bullying workshops via Zoom over the pandemic, and then recently they were like the first program that we brought back. Once we were allowed to be back into schools and visiting to in-person work, but we've definitely seen a huge increase for the need of these workshops. We're hearing from school administrators, teachers, parents, that young people are really struggling right now to communicate with how they're feeling. And all of these programs are interactive, and the students are put in role as experts, or their student leadership. They're part of the student leadership team, and they give advice to our teaching artists that to show how that they handle conflict, and they're acting like all of these workshops. We're acting out scenarios of conflict and bullying in front of them. So they're giving advice. They're connecting with each other during the class, which is really cool. So
yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And we've also launched the Trauma Informed Toolkit for Educators.
Yes, please tell us more about that. It's wonderful.
Of course, the Trauma Informed Toolkit for Educators is designed to provide educators with a deeper understanding of trauma and its effects on childhood development, while offering a set of tools to help create supportive, healing centered, trauma informed environments within a wide range of academic and recreational settings where students can grow.
Yeah, we have a long history using trauma-informed practices in our work in schools, in community centers, and in transitional housing. Actually, in 2015, we were hired as the sole theater arts partner in a partnership with the Mayor's Office and the Department of Education's Division of Early Childhood Education. And actually, currently, we are serving young people and families in shelter sites and in transitional housing sites in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan. And at many of these sites, we are the sole provider of arts programming since the height of the pandemic.
You guys, thank you so much for all that you do, and all of our teaching artists, everybody at New York City Children's Theater. It's amazing all that you guys do. And thank you for stopping by and telling everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
All right, now let's get to our guests. But first, you can ask them questions. So if you want, in the comments, in the chat, write it down, type it in. We will ask it for you. Okay, let's get to them. I can't wait. Jacques C. Smith. Jacques, where are you? There he is. He can currently be seen on Broadway in The Book of Mormon. And Jacques, I am highly jealous of your career because Jacques has been able to do such a breadth of different kinds of theater. Musicals, yes, but also straight plays. He does Shakespeare. He does classical theater. And he's done a ton of TV. And all of this, ever since I met Jacques a couple decades back when we both made our Broadway debuts doing Rent together on Broadway. Jacques is the father of Cayman, who is 15 years old. 15, right? 15.
He is 15, indeed.
Okay, so now this is a fun fact. Jacques and I did our first Broadway shows together, but our next guest and I did our last Broadway show together. Drew Gehling, come on out.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Yes, so Drew was most recently seen on Broadway playing Jeff Beebe. There he is. There we are in rehearsal. Was that the first day of rehearsal? And there he is. He was in Almost Famous on Broadway in that wig that was so fabulous. She earned a name, right, Drew?
Her name is Vanessa, and she is my spirit animal forever and always.
I'm sorry you guys were parted.
Me too.
We all loved Vanessa.
Right down the middle parted.
I see what you did there.
It's dad jokes. So you have dads on the show. That's what's going to happen.
Right. Yes. Yes. Bring them all night long. We're not scared.
Terrible.
Drew has also appeared on Broadway in Waitress, Jersey Boys, and On a Clear Day You Can See Forever. And he has also done a ton of TV and film. And Drew is the father of Annie, who is 9, right?
Yeah, she's 9.
9. All right, let's do it. Time for dad talk. We ready?
Hit me.
The first question I always ask every time, because I think it's a nice way to get to know you guys and your kids, is what do you like about your kid? Jacques, what do you like about Cayman?
I'll start. And I'll take liberty and say, I love it about him. I don't just like it. I love it about him. And one of the things that is unique about Cayman as a 15-year-old, he is an independent thinker and has been since the day he made his appearance on this earth. It is just who he is. It was not the way we planned for him to be, but we have great stories of choices he made at the ages of 3 and 4 years old. And you can see already there was this independent strain within him. And it's fantastic. It presents a challenge to parent at times, but it is one of the things that I think will be a boon for him throughout his entire life. In addition to that, I love that Cayman has a great heart. He really does. Since he was young, we would be at places or in big cities, my wife and I, and even as a toddler or right above toddler age, he would be like, can you give that man $1? Like anybody who was asking for money or panhandling anywhere, it has been his idea that we should always give. And at one point we had to tell him, Cayman, we can't give everybody $1 because your mother and father don't have that many dollars. But
in singles.
his heart, and we still see evidence of that today. And another thing which I love, especially right now, and we may get into it later, but I'm on the East Coast now, and he and my wife are on the West Coast. So his sense of humor, I love being around it, but also now to get texts and memes and TikToks from your teenage son, like that's the way they communicate. So those are
Right.
two things I love about him.
Right. Wow. Yeah, it's a whole new world. I'm not ready for it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
coming.
Coming. Drew, what do you like about Annie?
Oh, what do I like about Annie? What I love the most about Annie is the fact that she is now and has always been a moving target.
Hmm.
Everything is always no one really tells you. You think like, okay, the child that you have is the child that they will always be. You know, everything in the moment feels like it's forever. When they're infants, they're not sleeping. You're like, this is the rest of my life. I'm never sleeping again. That's just what's happening. No, sure enough, like a couple of weeks later, it resolves, and then there's an entirely new set of things.
Mm.
What I love the most about Annie is the way in which her sense of humor over the past couple of years has shifted from being a bubbly goofball to this 9-year-old that is bone dry in her delivery of just the way in which she sees the world, and as she becomes more and more confident with her own ability to describe things, she just gets funnier and funnier to be around. And I almost hope she never sees this, because
Yeah.
I don't want her to realize that she really gets my goat and makes me just crack up openly.
Yeah.
So that first and foremost, and followed directly by.
Do you think that's because she's the child of a comic actor? I mean, you don't know.
No,
But
I don't think so. I think it's just the way people are, the way in which you see and experience the world is going to be, her experience is completely different from mine,
yeah.
and completely different from her mom's as well. She just is like, her sense of humor just kind of evolved recently into this just super dry, like, well, I hope that works out for you. And it's like, you're 9. Who, like, speaking like a middle-aged, this is nuts. Followed closely by her immense, vast, and vivid imagination
Mm.
that has no bounds, and is just, without cease, the most exciting and meaningful part of being a parent for me has been watching her create
Mm.
worlds. And it's a real boon when your child says, Dad, what I really want to be is, I want to be a writer, I want to be an author.
Mm.
And from a creative person, and her mom is as well, and her soon-to-be stepmom is as well, and from like that bound of like people that are creators and artists and thinkers in this way, to have someone around us who just sees the world in a way that gives her the freedom to create it and make it her own,
Mm.
is exciting. And I can only hope that I can continue to be a shepherd and a cheerleader of that. Right.
Has she ever wanted to be a performer? I know she
It's
taps.
It's funny. She does tap. Good call. Good call. So she's taken tap for 2 years now, and it's something that her mom and I were like, we found, and we were like, just see if she's into it, and if she's into it, then great, because we never wanted to, being actors, you never want to say, and I think being anything, it's not like, don't you want to be like a refrigerator guy like your dad? Don't you want to such and such? Like, I don't even know why I said refrigerator guy. That's not a job that people have, but we'll use it for now. But you try not to kind of, you try not to lead the question. One of the biggest lessons I've been trying to do is like, just don't lead the question, just ask and see how it plays out.
Mm.
And so we got her into tap, and she kind of really played her cards close about it. And we just thought like, okay, she seems to like going. She goes, and every week she goes, and she wants to go again next week, and she wants to go again, and she has buddies, and it's good. And then we go to this recital, and this is a plug. Here's a plug for Shuffle's Tap Studio here in New York City. They run a great super tight ship. Stuff runs on time, which as parents we now know to be glorious. There's nothing like showing up and being like, oh, we're not even close to being on time. Great, wonderful. And they just are perfect with just keeping the flow is great. And we sat down, myself and my fiance Julia and Annie's mom Sarah and her boyfriend Cameron. We all sat down in the theater in our seats, and Annie's number started, and the kid is on 0, like cheesing it directly to the front row of the mezzanine.
By
And
0,
we're like,
you mean center stage, right?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They just and we're going like, where is she? I don't even see. And it took like a second to recognize that she just was like locked in and could. I guess part of it is that it's in you if it's in you. So but at the same time, it's not something that clearly drives her in a way that it drove me when I was much younger.
Right.
It just, if it's something that she likes to do, then great.
Yeah. Because both of you, your kids' moms, are performers too. So if anyone was genetically prepared to do this, what about Cayman and Jacques? Is
No interest at all. None.
None.
None whatsoever.
Fair
He's
enough.
a sometimes singer in the car. He can hold harmonies, but it is not his interest in being in Los Angeles. It was kind of like Drew said, we didn't push it at all. And so he had a few opportunities to like be in videos, music videos or whatever. But when the opportunities came, we pursued them, but it was not what he chose to do. So if he chooses to later, that's fine. At 15, I didn't think this would be a career path for me. So still not too late. So, you know.
Yeah.
But no interest to do it right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as performing dads, what are some of the best parts about being a performing parent for you guys?
I think one of the better experiences I've had in terms of being a performing dad one of them is the moments where I've been on tour, like touring actually, because it's a cool way to see the country, have him come out and experience different places, understand the idea of the traveling set, experience different theaters. But we have family kind of spread out around the country, but it's been the way that we have seen so many cities, honestly, in terms of performing. And
Did you ever tour with him, touring with you? Or was it
when he was very young, my wife at one point was doing a production of Jersey Boys, which I found out this week that Drew was also casted, like that they were there together. But at one point, like when he was that young, he would be with her sometimes in Vegas, and then with me on the road, we would just have to bring somebody in the family out with me to kind of stay in the hotel with him while I was doing the show. But we did that, and then later on, he hit school age, and so at that point,
Hey, Jacques. Jason, maybe we should have Jacques pull out and come back
on
in.
the break, so I needed to travel to.
Your connection is a little funky. Drew, why don't you answer the question? It's hello. You're
sorry.
better.
Sorry for being funky.
Why don't we have you talk to Jason offline, and I will have Drew answer that question. Yeah.
One of the best parts about being a performing parent is that the schedule in a lot of circumstances allows for a lot of flexibility. I really have come to love mornings and after school time, and being able to be around and available for those periods of time, and having those days free, especially when we're working at night, is so valuable. And to piggyback off of what Jacques said, like being able to travel and do a show and work out of town, especially when the kids are younger, it's like they don't care what we do at night. Like they don't care. We're not home, you know. But
I used to hear people talk about like having to miss bedtime. Bedtime sucks. They
Bedtime
are
can be
so
gnarly.
wired, and they are not humans I want to be.
Wait. Are Ash and Key really? Are they rough? Is it rough going at around bedtime?
Bedtime is so, yes, so it's tired wired. It's literally literally climbing up the walls. I'm so tired wired and jumping and not listening, and it's one of the more frustrating. And we're all tired, and I'm done. I'm cooked by then.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And then it's eyes towards the sky, tear fountains that just kind of go off into the
yes,
distance when it runs out of gas.
yes.
This is the wildest thing, this is the first time that I've ever admitted this. Annie is one of the, I think it's because, okay, so Annie's mom and I split up when Annie was not even 2. So very quickly we established a kind of a co-parenting style that was like a week with mom, a week with dad, a week with mom, a week with dad. And over the course of 9 years, with a couple of hiccups when Sarah's worked out of town or I've worked out of town, which also has its pluses and minuses, to Jacques' point earlier, Annie has somehow evolved into that kid that can pass out anywhere.
Oh, screw you. Quite
I
frankly.
don't
How
I
dare
don't
you?
deserve this, is what I'm saying. I don't deserve it. I don't. And somehow, and now she's old enough to be aware that she's like, Dad, I'm going to the sleepover. I'm bringing a pillow because I know that I'm the only one that can go to sleep at anyone else's house. I'm fine with it. I was like, okay.
Dead
She's
cat.
like, but I just need my own pillow. As long as I have my own pillow, I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then, I love that. I love that because it really is a different, like you get to pick them up from school. Hi, Jacques. Let's see how
Hey,
you
how are you? Can you hear me?
I
Yeah,
can
good.
hear those sweet dulcet tones.
We missed you.
I've been listening. I've been paying attention the whole time. I've heard it.
Fantastic. You were in the middle of talking about touring. You had toured with a little bit, you sort of toured with him when he was little. But then after that, I think you meant sort of like he'd be living somewhere and then he'd come out and join you in different cities.
For a little bit, yeah. Like it was never tenable in terms of our family arrangement for him to be on the road long term with me. It was just about making sure when he was that young that he
Yeah.
spent time with both of us, kind of like what Drew was just saying.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like that's it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So we did the nice parts. What are some of the worst parts about being a performing parent?
I'll say it again. The schedule is gnarly. I for those people that really hated bedtime, I came to love it so much, and it's weird that I really started to kind of love it during the pandemic. I really started to love the stability of every day kind of being the same. And I
Yeah.
know in a lot of ways that was like claw your eyes out, tug your hair out. That was painful in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it was nice to just know that the day could have a flow and an end point.
Mhm.
And then mom and dad could sit down, or like Jules and I could sit down, and we're just like able to sit and, decompress and know that the wind up and the wind down can all kind of be built in. I do miss bedtime when we're working, especially when you're in tech. Um, the span of time that it takes to put a show up, while it'll take 5 years off of our lives, to a child, that's a relatively huge portion of their life. I mean, a month of kids' life is, relatively speaking, vast. And for us, it's like we can power through and we can get through it, but
Right.
it is very real to kind of just check in and remember, like, oh gosh, this is hard on them as much as it's hard on us.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Jacques?
I would echo the sentiment of the schedule being difficult, especially when you're doing a long running show. If you're fortunate enough to be doing one that has a shorter lifespan, you kind of feel like, oh, you can see the end of it. But just not having that evening time when they get home from school and you're possibly on your way out the door, or if the child is young enough, when you get back, their sleep. But the other thing in terms of what my career has actually brought me, and I'm in the midst of it now, is just the distance, being away, because I have had to be away from him for a time, and that is tough. And it's one of those things. Broadway isn't in Wichita, Broadway isn't in Los Angeles, like it's in New York. And
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter where you were before then, this is where that work is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
because he's in LA and you
Yes,
probably called and you couldn't say no.
that's true.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's rough. How do you feel like the theater community has supported you guys, or do you feel like the theater community has supported you guys as parents? Drew.
It's funny because there's been numerous times where our peers, which, when you're first starting out, are very much your, the fellow actors with you in a project, or people that you've worked with before, or people that you just know socially around. But eventually that pool of people grows to include people on multiple coasts, and people in cities now across the country that are working for other jobs, or in regional theaters, or on television, and everywhere. So having a network in place, of a village that you try to keep up with as much as you possibly can, is key. In that world, our community is so supportive. When it comes to the rigidity of the schedule and being able to bend for that sort of stuff, it's really hard to go like, hey, my kid's school play is on Thursday night, and I would love it if I can get a personal day. And the sad, crummy reality of commercial theater is that it's like, we would love to be able to guarantee that, but we literally can't necessarily do that. And that's tough. That's like a tough reality of just what it is to I guess be a parent in the business. And it's and that's something I can't lie and say that I don't grapple with that. It is a thing that I wish we could do a little bit better at, but I also understand the mindset of the show needing to go on and continue, but even if it's not always for the best. That's a terrible answer. Jacques, please rescue me.
No, Drew, totally not terrible. Totally not terrible. And what you're saying inspires me to like tip my hat to you and Anika. Like, what the business in which we find ourselves is not parent friendly in terms of the relationship with children. Like, you have to do more than what traditional relationships tell you the parent and child should be, because of, like we said, the hours are so tough. So I have to say, honestly, I have found, I've been fortunate where the theater communities in which I have found myself, when Drew talked about communities, have been helpful to me in helping parent. In terms of needing that time, giving him access to the theater just so they can see that world. At times it's been tough. Like, he's had to sit in several shows because of babysitting issues, but he was able to be there.
Wait, has he ever had to, not to interrupt, but I need a specific story. Was there ever a moment on the road where you're like out with it then, and like, oh my gosh, the nanny's sick, he's just backstage hanging out, like in your dressing room, rolling around while you're out there like, okay, dad's gonna go, I'm gonna do something really quick.
And he was older, honestly. He was older when he was able to go backstage, and it was pre-pandemic, so it wasn't a bad thing. Unfortunately, if you're a principal, you have maybe a dressing room for yourself, and you kind of sequester him backstage. But totally, he had to, when he got to a certain age, he sat in the audience and watched, or stage managers took him to the sound booth.
Oh, yeah.
Was with them there, where I was like,
take your kid to work day. This is great.
And it really is take your child to work day, but I have done him in the dressing room. I have had him at a sound booth. He has been in the stage management office of different shows, of different times, when we were like, we really need help today. And they've helped. So, and the truth is, I am in a situation now, Drew, where I am constantly asking for personal days to get to LA. And this is me giving a full-throated endorsement from my producers right now. Thompson Turner and the people at the Book of Mormon are fantastic. And it is not an exaggeration. Because what you just described, Drew, when you say, I need a day to go see my daughter's play, if your daughter's play is in LA, It can't just happen in one day.
No.
It's impossible. So you have to ask for more days just to do that one event. And that's the unique situation I find myself in right now. But they have helped me feel like I'm still present with my son's freshman year of high school.
Mm.
And the type of person I am, I wouldn't have it any other way. And
Yeah.
if the choice came between his freshman year and this job, I'm doing the parenting. And I've made that explicitly clear to the people in the building, to my producers, to my family. It's like, I tell him, I'm like, you're the most important thing. And I'm only there as long as it works for all of us.
Mhm.
You
Good
know,
for them. Honestly,
but,
that's really
but
nice.
honestly, it depends, Drew, because the truth is everybody isn't like that.
You're right. Yeah.
Others
But when you
like
do find, but it does make it a lot easier to come back when into a show like that, when you're treated in that way and treated like a human that says, hey, I've got a life and I need to make this work. And they're like, we can do it. Sure.
100%.
Small price to pay for us to make sure that like you're okay, your family's good. That makes all the difference.
And
And
that's
that
the
really,
beauty of a long running show that you couldn't do like with Almost Famous in the fall because it was tech, it was previews, it was opening. But with a Book of Mormon, how many years has Book of Mormon been on Broadway?
they opened in 2011.
So it is a factory there. It is a well-oiled machine and they know how to do it. And so it is easier for them. It's great that they're doing it, but it is easier for them to let you go take your personal days. And I'm sure your understudy loves it. And, you know, I mean, it's, yeah, I think that that is one of the joys of job security is, and a long running show is that to have the freedom to live like a person who has the kind of job that has normal vacation and personal day situations.
Right.
You know?
That being said, it's also kind of like just you hearing that you brought your son to like, you know, just stay in this dressing room for a little bit or come
That
to.
stresses me out so much. The
No,
thought
get this. No, this used to happen all the time. When there was a period in Waitress where Chris Fitzgerald, because on the floor of the Brooks, it was me in one room and then Chris Fitzgerald and Nick Cordero in the room next to us. And Fitz, there was one day where Annie had to, like, I had lost my sitter or she had to travel or something last minute had happened and Sarah was out of town and I was like, okay. And I'm calling them and I'm like, at this point, she was really little. Like pretty little, and I was like, guys, I don't know what to do. Cards on the table. This is the deal, and they were like, honestly, just bring her. We'll all and I called Chris and I called Nick, and I was like, guys, what do we do? And Chris was like, when you're on stage, I'm off stage. When you're on stage, Cordero's off stage, and Chris was like, also full disclosure, I have to bring my boys today too. So if you help with math homework while I'm on stage. So it was that entire floor of like just dudes. It's just like a 3-year-old and then like his 2 preteens just like working on algebra and like playing game. It was utterly nuts. It was utterly nuts, but it also felt like, oh yeah, we're just doing the musical.
We're just doing
we do the musical every day. Like we know how to do the musical. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. There's a movie in that or a TV show or a
that's so cool.
A musical in that.
Very slings and arrows, isn't it?
Right. I'm curious if as fathers, you feel like the asking for accommodations for parenting conflicts or considerations, if you feel like they're taken as seriously as mothers, if you can have any sense of that. Both your kids' mothers are in the business, so you've watched them deal with it on their side too. I wonder if that's a thing you felt, and if it's something that's changed over time, or if it really doesn't feel like a thing at all, which would be nice, I suppose.
I'm sure in some ways it's changed. I think what happens in our industry is because the reality is in a given company, there are usually so few parents.
Yeah.
And so that's sometimes when you're the one or the only one. And I remember when my wife was like the only parent in a show and our son was young, it was harder because nobody else could relate to what that need was for her in terms of that's what it does to you emotionally. That's really tough because everybody's like, no, just come to work. You do it. And, it's easy, and then people will tell you, I have pets. I have a dog. I have a cat. And
Like, yeah,
It's different, you know, and that's what they say to like try to relate, and
Right.
it's all well intended but misinformed. And so as I've gotten older, and the child came and becomes more self-sufficient at different times, like we've seen things, but there is a gentleman in our show presently. I believe his daughter was born right near the end of the pandemic, right before things reopened.
Mhm.
But we see the difference in culture. So now he had paternity leave given by the state of New York. So
Right.
there was a certain amount the law had given him. So I think he had 8 weeks in the first year. Like, and Drew, you might be able to know, like you might know this better than I do. But there were moments where that particular actor, he would be out again for 1 week or a 2 week stretch, and they were like, that's still part of his paternity leave because his daughter was still less than a year old.
Yeah.
And previously that would have never happened,
Yeah.
So the culture has changed, as well as, like you said, the luck of the draw in terms of long running show versus news show and what your producers will allow you to do.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Honestly, so well said, Jacques. Like, it's so interesting how hope hearing that it's hopefully that continues to get better, but it's still undeniably true that, and maybe it's because of the nature of our industry and the kinds of shows, and because you can really only kind of speak to like what's specifically on and playing right now. The casts tend to, as a whole, skew a lot younger, and you're just less likely to see people having families at those younger ages, and so it becomes less of a thing that the union feels like it needs to actively pursue,
Yeah.
because it's not a problem that everybody really needs to experience until you are in the cast and you're one of the only parents. I mean, in Almost Famous, Anika, were you and I
And
the
Chris
only
Wood,
two members?
3 out of
And Woody, yeah,
Yeah.
3 out of
Yeah.
with children, and it is definitely it's without any question a significant life event that requires an enormous amount of time and grace and flexibility in the moment, where and where luckily, Anika, you didn't have any nights where you're like, because every now and then you'll have that thing of like, there's vomit everywhere, I'm not coming in, there's no question, sorry. Like, and every now and then you can play that card and you're like, it's real, it's just, we go like, you know what, it's fine, and very much a part of life, and I hope over time becomes more normalized as we realize that it's just sometimes life happens, and when our job starts at the end of the day as opposed to the beginning of the day,
Yeah.
we're kind of punching in when everybody else is sitting down for their wind down and glass of wine at the end of the day.
Right.
So
Yeah.
completely have to recalibrate the entire mindset.
Yeah. And you're making me think this is not something I'd really thought of before, but that I found that I edited all the time talking about my kids at work, because I didn't want to be that person who was so, but it was the number of times somebody walked past my dressing room and was like, I'm so tired. And I was like, I know you
Nope.
weren't at 6:45 this morning taking your kids to school. I just know you weren't. Nobody wants to hear that. I'm not going to be that jerk, right?
And they weren't. You really
No,
know
they weren't.
You're
And
like,
also,
I saw what y'all did.
made a choice last night and fun. I did that 20 years ago,
Right.
but yeah, no, it's interesting. And it's not that anybody ever has said to me or ever made in any way, like made me feel like they didn't want to hear it. And, but yeah, I wonder how much that was self-imposed or how much that was like signaling that I was. Do you guys feel like you edit when you're at the theater? Do you feel free to talk about your kids as much as you want?
It's a great get out of jail free card, Anika. You're just like, no, I'm not coming. I gotta get up at 7:30. Bye.
Yeah, no, that's true. I didn't go anywhere or do anything. Nobody invited me to anything extracurricular because they knew I wouldn't show up.
No, I don't want you to feel left out.
No,
Of
no, in
all
a good
this.
way. I don't know. I'm too tired. And I did that. No, it was so sweet. Sweet Chad Burris. I remember out in the Old Globe when we were doing the show. And I had Asha out there with me, and he was 2. And I had to go home to him every night. And I remember him saying, we were getting our wigs off in the wig room at the end of the show. And he's like, I'm so sorry you can never come out with us. And I said, oh, no. It would be sad if I hadn't lived what you're living right now. But I was on tour with Rent when I was 23. And that was
I saw it.
You saw me in North Carolina, right?
I did.
Crazy small world. But like, I lived these years you're living now, and I don't want to go out tonight. So thank God I have a 2-year-old, so nobody looks at me weird that I don't want to go frolic with you guys. Also, the one time I went out to the bar after, to Nunu's after, it was the explosion. It was like Norm walking into Cheers. Like, it was the explosion of excitement when I'm, Mom! Great. And then never again. Never again.
Yeah. No, it's that's real. Yeah, you do kind of feel like you're there is an understanding. Come on, there is an understanding. And Jacques, you must feel this way at Mormon, like with all those those youngins rolling around in there. It's like there is like a recognition that, like, yeah.
Oh, 100%.
I can't
I kind of say what Anika said. It's like, I did what you're doing already. I did it. So have fun. It's great. But I'm not joining you. I can't.
Yeah. You'll be good.
Especially now at my age. I was like, I wouldn't be able to do the show tomorrow. I'd be out. And I'm trying to come to work.
Yeah.
That's why you're in New York. Yeah.
Right.
So I would love to know how, or if, but how becoming a father has changed your perspective on your career, or has changed the choices that you make in your career.
Wow. How has it changed my perspective? I mean, it provides a more clear perspective than I could have imagined.
How?
When you do theaters, particularly, you come in and you have this incredibly wonderful community that you may not have, full of people you may not have known, and you get to know them sometimes over the course of 2 months or 3 months if it's a regional theater run, or years if it's a Broadway or a touring run. And in the theater world, you start to understand things that are supposedly problems, or things that annoy you just working on the stage, what the stage manager did, what this other person in the company did. And, these are the conversations you have backstage about what's not right, how my quick change clothes are hung. That's a problem. Right. You have a child and you're like, man, none of that is an issue ever. It really never is. That person's trying their best. I don't know what their situation is, and let's all just come here and try to have a good time. But came and provided instant perspective, not only for me as a performer, but throughout my whole life. Like, what really matters, wherever I stand, what really matters. And the thing is, right now, I try to stand wherever I am, so that if he were in the room, he would be proud to say I was his dad. No matter who's around or wherever I am, if he were there and heard me or looked at me, it would always be like, that guy's my father.
Wow. Now I'm never going to be able to think about life any other way than that. Lovely.
I'm so mean to people at work. My God.
Imagine.
That's such a beautiful thing to say, and that is so real and marvelous. It's so cool to think that, that it's very true that, like, having a child just focuses your resolve in a way that you wouldn't have even have thought about before, like, because you're thinking about legacy much more so than you're thinking about, oh, well, my dresser, or my co-star is really being some kind of way, or they won't give me this day, or I didn't get my vacation week that I wanted, or they didn't cast me in this thing, or I really wanted to go out on tour and it didn't happen. And really like suddenly everything has some semblance of purpose or reason, because not doing this thing and doing this thing instead, or having this time off instead of having this time off, or work being work and home being home, all really kind of comes down to the issue of me getting to spend more time being Annie's dad and less time, you know, doing the career that we kind of chose for ourselves when we were in our late teens or early 20s.
Mhm.
And you know, it's kind of like we have built this village for ourselves over the course of time, and now we are in the stage of our lives where we are existing in that village in such a way that we're showing our kids the best kind of people that we know how to be, and we want them to see as examples. And I really am just bowled over by what you said, man. That was
Mhm.
incredible.
Do you feel like it changes? Like, I remember the first time I considered my kids when I got offered an audition, and I turned it down because it was my character would have died in a very gory way, and I just didn't want my kids to ever have that image of me. And so I was like, nah, I'm not into it. Do you ever feel like they're, for whatever reason, are there jobs you've turned down, or auditions you haven't taken since becoming a dad because you were a dad?
Go.
Oh, please, Jacques, go ahead.
Go. No, go.
This is actually just going to be a terrible story. During the pandemic, I did a show called The Blacklist, which is on NBC, and I had like a nice arc on it over the course of the seasons. But unfortunately, up until that point, Annie was always like too young to come and see me in whatever it was I was doing. Like, she couldn't come see Jersey Boys because I'm just dropping F-bombs left and right, and it was very loud, and she was an infant. And then it was Waitress, and like it was a 2 hour and 45-minute show, and she was again very, very, very small. And by the time it was finally done, she had like gotten to a point where she was like maybe old enough to like see it, but maybe also old enough to realize what it was about. And I didn't really want to have that discussion yet, because it was like, you know, you're 6. That seems early. So long story even longer, she had never really seen me do anything. Work was just something that Dad would go to and do at night. And so the kind of like the nice shift was, I was going by day to shoot this TV show down on Chelsea Pier, which was really close by where we were. And it was really fun. And I was like, this is a great place to go to work. I like these people. I like this job. It's great. They pick me up at 4 a.m. We shoot a little thing. I'm done. I get home. Up in time to like take you to school. And then that's my day. This is great.
Mhm.
And so we finally get around to like, I shoot the whole arc, and then the arc finishes, but I hadn't really been watching it on, and it was right around like bedtime, and I was like, oh shoot, it's on. Do you want to see a little clip of like Daddy doing something? And it was the moment that I was shot and
Oh,
killed. So the first ever image
night.
Right.
that Annie saw of me working ever was just dead. And I was like, no, it was fun. That's Megan. And that's Goran. He's a very nice man. He's very nice. He has little girls just your age. And she was like, oh, cool. Goes to bed. Sure enough, 45 minutes later, Dad, excuse me, Dad. That was a little intense. And I felt so bad. So immediately when we went back into Waitress, like right after the pandemic, like I was like, Jules, you have to bring Annie to see so she can see something fun and enjoyable, like because we have a great time 90% of the time. That was just a very so she finally now has seen like the work that we do, but that was the first time, and my gosh, sorry to air that out.
Yeah, no, it's a great story for her to tell when she's a grown up, but
Yeah,
nightmares.
but not as a young one. That was it happens, you know.
No.
Sometimes it's a fail.
What about you, Jacques?
Um, There are several ways to answer that, but one of them is like, I know I sing the most profane song on Broadway right now, every night.
Oh my
Like,
God,
that's
you
a fact.
do indeed.
And so it's like when I am doing this show, and I've done several shows on stage and on screen where I've been killed and or have died, I've and had to be nude even. So it's like done I had already made those choices within my acting career, some before he was born and some right after when he was young. So I'm still open. It's always about the material. And just like Drew said, there were certain things he couldn't see. Like there was a string of shows at one point. I was like, man, I am doing these plays, but you can see none of them.
Yeah.
None of them. And so it just took a while. I always explain it. And it even took him, when I first got Book of Mormon, I didn't let him see it. But then before middle school, he came, saw it. Of course, the cool middle school. He's like, I don't know why you waited. It wasn't that bad. That was his reaction to me after
Oh
he
my
saw
God.
it. But yeah, so I had already made choices for material that was considered edgy. And I just try to discuss things with him. Because even in If Then, when we did it, there's certain songs you're like, this is not one you can sing at school. Like the stuff that you hear on the soundtrack that I'm playing at the house, you can't do. So that I just talked to him about it. I literally talk him through things before he comes to see me, whether it's on screen or on stage. Like, this is what's happening. These are the things you should look out for, and then get his feedback after and see what he thinks.
That's cool.
Mhm.
That's cool. Okay, so for me, Almost Famous. So my boys are 5 and 7, and so Almost Famous was the first time they ever saw me in a play, and it was the first time that they ever had to come along the roller coaster ride of my career. And, when we closed, they were devastated. When they cut my song in Act One, which I had been singing to them for like 4 years since the first reading, I started doing it just as a way to memorize the words. And then they started to request it. When they cut that song, the big fat tears that little kids can produce like instantly out of their eyeballs, like the sobbing, the devastation of that. And so it was a realization of, oh, they're going to experience these joys and these sorrows with me. And how much do I want to be managing that? And so I'm curious about you, because your kids are a little bit older, or significantly older. And so I'm curious, have you found yourself managing that? Like, I don't tell my family about auditions because I don't want to have the follow-up about it. And I don't think I would tell my kids really about it. But like, do you protect them from that?
In some ways, as a parent, you're always protecting your kids. So, like, even with open discussions, you don't tell them everything. There is a level at which you tell them for their age, maturity, and mental state. So,
Right.
like, it's always filtered.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, I try to be more direct with the filter, because it is a unique part of our job. It is less secure than most adults, and
Right.
we are the people who are in the 1% of people who have chosen to do this. And even with that, it is still an insecure business, and it provides ups and downs. So I have to let him know, because he hears or sees his friends at schools like, yeah, this is the journey your mother and I have chosen.
Yeah.
And it takes me away. It takes her away. Sometimes we're together. Sometimes we're not in the show and we're looking. So we have to audition, and we hope it comes. So, and as they get older and can process it in a way that doesn't feel detrimental to their growth, given that my son is older than all three of your children combined, it's like, once you feel like they're at that place, you'll be able to filter it in a way that's appropriate, and also hopefully provide them with appreciation for what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you
I
do.
will say that the one plus of all of it is no, given the fact that it can be such an unstable um, position to be in as an actor, where sometimes shows run for a long time and sometimes they run for a very short period of time. The one great thing that we really do have going for us is when we go to work, even if it's just auditioning, or if it's doing a reading or doing a workshop or going out of town or being on the road or anything, everyone who is coming to work to do the job likes their job.
Hmm.
at the core. And you can't say that for the vast majority of professions in the world, that
Yeah.
every single person in our building, I mean, people have crusty days, of course, but at the end of the day, no one would choose this as a job if they didn't fully and completely love it and love what it can do in its best forms. And I think I always have tried to make very clear to Annie that, you know, even if sometimes not the best outcomes happen with work stuff, if daddy takes this job or mom has to go out of town, or, you know, the small things like that that can be very big things for young children, at the end of the day, dad and mom and your stepmom and your mom's boyfriend as well, like, love what they do and care about it very deeply. And it's because we're passionate and care about the things that we work on. That level of work ethic is part of what makes it valuable. It's that, you know, if you care about what you're doing, then you're not going to be you're not working a day in your life, as it were. So
Love it. That feels like a lovely place to stop.
oh my God, lightning round time.
Lightning round time. You're ready. I know you are. There are no wrong answers, only 2 slow answers. All right. Look, we even have a. All
Look
right.
we've got a ticker. Yeah, that's awesome.
Because you can't do a sound effect, so we do the ticker.
I'll
All
do
right.
it.
You ready?
Yes.
Everybody ready?
We are.
Buckle in. Okay. Who would you rather babysat your kid? Jeff Beebe from Almost Famous or Benny from Rent? Drew.
That guy's very responsible.
Sure. Jacques.
Benny from Rent.
Yeah. Are you still able to help your kid with their homework, or is it beyond you? Drew.
Oh, I'm crushing it. Yes, I'm good.
Yeah. Jacques.
Everything except AP Bio.
Fair enough. Does your kid like it when you sing to them? Drew.
No.
Did she ever?
No.
Jacques.
No and yes.
Great. What kind of food have you and your kid had the most fights about them eating? Drew.
Sugar.
Jacques.
Vegetables.
Okay. What was your child's favorite role they ever saw you play? Jacques.
Ooh, Nomo and Five Guys Named Mo.
Drew.
Dr. Pomander and Waitress. Five Guys Named Mo is amazing.
It's so fun.
It's so fun.
What is your favorite TV show to watch with your kids, Jacques?
Boondocks.
Drew.
Star Trek Prodigy.
Okay. Last question. Finish this sentence. If my experience with fatherhood were a musical, it would be called On a Clear Day You Can See what? Jacques.
Not very far.
Drew.
A 7:30 a.m. wake-up call.
Ding, 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 ding. I am being told it was a tie. You both win.
Oh,
You
the
guys
judges are in. This is so good.
Thank you so much for being here with me tonight, you guys. That was a fabulous discussion. I learned from that. I always learn from these discussions, but I really, man, that one I'm going to be chewing on for a while. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you to Jason Crespin, who is our technical mastermind. Thank you. Thank you to Nicole and Matt at New York City Children's Theater. Thank you to Andrea and Maddie for coming by today. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again. Our next one is April 10th. We'll be talking to stage managers. Ever wonder how stage managers are parents? I don't honestly know how they do it. Their schedule is worse than anyone else's in the building. All right. Well, April 10th, tune in for that. Thank you guys again so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us, Anika. Bye.
A pleasure.